The general idea is that knowledge comes through our own endeavor, that through our use of mind, through our use of intellect, and through our use of senses, we can come to tangible conclusions about the reality of life. But this idea in the ancient wisdom texts of India, it's quite the opposite. In the ancient wisdom texts of India, it's understood that knowledge descends according to the attitude of the person who wants to receive that knowledge. And this is practical. Is anyone a university student here? Or has been a university student before? Now, how many of you remember specifically students who were very submissive, very humble in relationship to their teachers, how well they would succeed in their classes? And then students who had a bit of a chip on their shoulder and who kind of came in thinking that they could figure everything out, how successful they would be. Who has this experience? Can someone share what their experience is with those two diametric persons? Anyone can share. Preferably someone who hasn't spoken yet. Anyone. It's an open space. You don't have to feel shy. Yes?
I think a person who's more submissive towards the teacher, like she's more, the student's more receptive, and the teacher's willing to invest into that student.
That's a good point. That when someone is submissive, that opens up the teacher's heart, so knowledge can descend.
Yeah.
So we see even in modern systems of education that if you have a student who has a chip on their shoulder, who thinks they know everything, they're less likely to open up the contents which the teacher has within their heart and within the experience which has come from that particular teacher's life and practice of a particular field of knowledge. The student won't be able to derive as much benefit from the teacher. So before anyone speaks on spiritual subject matters, it is the tradition and the legacy to offer homage to the teachers which have come before, because the speaker who's sharing that spiritual knowledge, they're only meant to be representatives of the knowledge. They're not meant to boast their own personality. They're not meant to seek self-aggrandizement, but they're meant to represent a process. And when they represent that process in a transparent way, everyone understands this word, transparent. You have opaque, which is you can't see clearly, and then transparent is things become clear. So when one represents that process in a transparent way, then it makes it accessible to others. So before I speak, I'll just offer some quick prayers offering homage to the previous teachers which have come before me, and then we'll enter into our topic for the evening. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakvaya Chakshurun Minitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swampanantikam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pajarine Devi Shesha Shunyavadi Paschatadeshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Oh, I'm just coming from India. Has anyone visited India before? Or anyone's from India? You're from India. What part of India? Delhi, okay. So you'll know this reference I'm about to bring up. Every year in India, and just finished around this time of year, there's something known as Magh Mela. And every 12 years, there's something known as Kumbh Mela. Has anyone heard of this? Magh Mela or Kumbh Mela? It's a festival in India where millions of people come every year to a place called Prayagraj on the banks of the Ganga. Has everyone heard of the Ganga? The Ganga is a sacred river in India, and on the banks of the Yamuna. And it's a place where the two rivers meet. And during the month of January, which in Sanskrit is known as the month of Magh, millions of people gather to simply bathe in those holy waters. It's an interesting event because you have different people coming from different parts of India, different parts of the world, different parts of the universe. It's described that at this particular festival, people will come up from the Ganga. There'll be yogis who just appear out of the Ganga and they walk onto shore. There's yogis who live up high in the Himalayas and they developed such powerful yogic shakti, yogic power, that they're able to take a bath at one point of the Ganga and then rise at this particular section practically within seconds. So you have people from all different walks of life, people from all different paths towards trying to understand the realm of transcendence, converging in one place for an entire month. And they all have different ideas, they all have different conceptions, but they're all gathering for a common purpose, which is to take this holy bath. So while I was there, I just noticed that practically everything that you could experience in existence was there. Anything that you could imagine, that you could experience within your life, is fully present there. I mean, it's difficult to describe in words, but anything that you can possibly imagine that exists underneath the sun is going on at this festival once a year. And every 12 years, even more people come. From all over the world they come. And next year will be the Kumbh Mela, which is the biggest festival. Why am I bringing up this example? Because we see in the world today various differing opinions about what is morality, what is the ultimate goal of life, and what is the ultimate purpose of our existence, or rather, a lack of conversation about what is the ultimate purpose of our existence. And this lack of clarity, this lack of proper understanding, this lack of inquisitiveness has produced a disease which I've called spiritual apathy. You see in the world today, many people are interested in creating a comfortable circumstance for themselves materially, organizing facilities for themselves and their friends and their family, to be well situated at the expense of other people's lives, at the expense of other people's property, and at the expense of other people's human rights. This is going on today. And all of this, according to the ancient wisdom texts of India, is due to a lack of spiritual knowledge. But then simultaneously we see that people who claim to be spiritual can sometimes be the most grotesque, can sometimes be the most cruel, can sometimes be the most outright inhumane people on the planet. And this creates a lot of bewilderment in the minds of people because within the heart of everyone, it's my personal conviction that there is an inherent spiritual longing. And this inherent spiritual longing, it manifests in different pursuits and different goals. But ultimately, within the heart of everyone, there's an inherent spiritual longing. Now, in the West, our exposure to spirituality generally comes from Judeo-Christian traditions. And because of some of the ideas which have arisen due to these Judeo-Christian traditions, many people, they don't feel that there's a need to speak about a spiritual life. There's not a need to speak about God. There's not a need to speak about religion, because their experience with religion, their experience with God, is one which just creates ideas of repression, creates ideas and experiences of exploitation. And these experiences and emotions which are associated with these concepts, the natural response to these emotions in relationship to these particular topics is that it's better that we just adopt an apathetic disposition towards spiritual life. So one of our teachers, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says that the natural response to an immature definition of God and religion is atheism. So I would say that most people in the world, especially in America, they have an inherent spiritual longing. But that inherent spiritual longing, it's covered over due to bad experiences with the definitions which they've been given of God and religion. Who could agree with this? Is this a fair observation? So what's the repercussions of that? What's the result of that? Well, our teacher, our most recent teacher, all of his picture is right here. He explained that philosophy without religion is mental speculation. Basically, mental speculation just means you're creating ideas which have no accessibility and which have no practical value. You're just producing ideas for the sake of producing ideas. But it's explained in philosophy that philosophy has value only to the degree that it's accessible and it can actually be practically applied in the life of someone. So philosophy without religion is mental speculation. But then religion without philosophy is fanaticism. So what is the harmony between these two? The harmony between philosophy and religion. That's the question that we have to ask ourselves. And we've already clearly established that the cause of atheism isn't so much due to an inherent feeling that God doesn't exist, but due to an immature definition which has been given to us on the basis of our limited experience in relationship to spiritual knowledge and religion. So what is the real pursuit? And why did I bring up this example of Magh Mela? Because at Magh Mela, it's a different experience. It's not the experience that you see in the West with religion, with God, with spirituality. It's not simply trying to, rubber stamp that I've done my duty for the day. I've done my, spiritual activity for the day. I've gone to my yoga class for the day. But the inherent underlying feeling, the spirit of what is supposed to be Magh Mela, this gathering of all these different spiritual traditions, these gathering of all these spiritual seekers, it is a testament of the human's inherent need to seek truth. And this is the point that I want to bring out today, is that we have been exposed to many ideas and concepts of God and religion, but we may have never been exposed to a concept of truth which goes beyond these limited definitions of God and religion. And what is truth? What does truth mean? Does anyone want to give a definition? NYU, you probably have a good definition.
Definition of truth?
Yeah.
Something that applies in all situations and cannot be disproven.
Yeah, is true and it's something that applies in all circumstances and situations, right?
And absolute.
And absolute means it's beyond the considerations of relativity. So what we generally see in this world in relationship to religion and God and spirituality is we see definitions on the relativity of that particular tradition, right? That you have to believe in this on the basis of this. You have to believe in this on the basis of that. And then we see conflicts between the two differing traditions on the basis of these relative truths. But absolute truth is that inherent substance which underlies all spiritual traditions at all times in all places. So what is that inherent spiritual substance which applies in all times and all places? the Vedic literature, the wisdom texts of India, specifically the book Srimad Bhagavatam, explains that that inherent truth which underlies the pursuit of all traditions, of all spiritual paths, is known in 3 phases. I'm going to quote some Sanskrit, so just be patient with me. Vedanti tat tatvat vidas tatvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. That the truth is understood in 3 phases of existence. But this truth, although existing in 3 phases, is ultimately, simultaneously one and different from itself. You understand what I'm saying with this one and different? It's just like you have sun rays. They're one with the sun, but the power of those rays, the quality of those rays, is different from the sun itself, right? But they're inherently one with the sun. You can't have the rays without the sun. So they're one and different from each other. So the ancient Vedic literature explains that this absolute truth is understood in 3 dimensions of understanding. The first dimension of understanding is known as Brahman. This is for those who are intelligent and for those who are seeking knowledge beyond the designations of this realm. This is their first experience with truth. This is a non-differentiated, nondescript, all-pervasive reality which maintains and supports and uplifts everything. Its nature is impersonal. It doesn't have any particular name. It doesn't have any particular form. But it's this inherent feeling that beyond all the forms and substances of this world, there is something bigger than us, and there is something which is connecting us. Can anyone relate with this? This definition? Brahman realization. Anyone who's a little bit inquisitive can think about this idea of Brahman. There is a nondescript substance which is pervading and supporting and preserving all of us, just like the sun. When you see the sun rising in the morning, if anyone's been in nature, I grew up in Seattle, Washington, well, Portland, Oregon, but generally I say Seattle because it's a bit easier to relate with. So I remember when I was growing up as a child, I would see the sun rise, and as soon as the sun would rise, the plants would go like this to this, and they would be lifted up by the rays of the sun. So in the same way, through the presence of Brahman, everything comes into existence and everything becomes aware through the power of that Brahman. And just as one can know the power of, or one can understand that what gives illumination to a room is fire or light. In the same way, the definition of Brahman, that which is its inherent characteristic, is consciousness. We are a part of that Brahman. It's often said, aham brahmasmi. You are that. Tat tvam asi. You are that powerful, all-pervasive, spiritual Shakti, spiritual energy. And your inherent characteristic is consciousness. Just as we can understand a room is illuminated by fire, our life is illuminated by consciousness, and that consciousness is the characteristic of Brahman. But to just stop at that point is not enough, because it's explained in the Upanishads. Has anyone heard of the Upanishads before? Everyone? Most people. Upanishads are a very powerful text. I think we may have 1 or 2 up there. A very powerful text which is codified knowledge written in Sanskrit. And in the Upanishads, it's explained that the absolute truth has to have everything within and beyond our experience. That the ultimate reality should have everything within and beyond our experience. Everything which is existing in this relative realm of changing bodies, changing circumstances, changing friends, changing families. Everything which is existing in this realm should also be existing in that realm. So this first definition of Brahman is the first grade of realization. It's not the ultimate grade of realization. As one looks a little bit higher, Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that beyond that Brahman is what's known as Paramatma. And this Paramatma is a bit more of a personal aspect of the absolute truth. Generally, how we can relate with Paramatma is intuition. Has anyone been in circumstances or been put into places in which they have a deep feeling that they need to move in a particular direction, or they need to change the course of their life? Has anyone had this feeling before? Or that this saying, follow your heart. Has anyone heard this before? You should follow your heart. And who's experienced when they don't follow their heart, circumstances become such that at some point you're going to have to follow your heart? Has anyone experienced this before? Yeah. So this principle of guidance is Paramatma. The absolute truth makes itself personally available to us as a friend sitting within our heart giving guidance. And the analogy which is often given is two birds sitting in a tree. There's one bird which is all-knowing, which is simply observing and is a very peaceful state. And there's one bird which is a bit agitated and restless, and it's enjoying the different fruits of the tree. And they keep changing from one tree to another tree to another tree. The tree is like the body, and the fruits inside the tree are like the different things which the body can touch. Hands touch form, eyes hands have the sense of feeling, ears have the sense of sound, nose has the sense of smell, eyes have the sense of sight. And each sense has a sense object which is related to. So the fruits in the tree are those sense objects. So one bird is really agitated, trying to enjoy the different fruits inside the tree. But it's never satisfied tasting those fruits. But as soon as it turns its attention to that guide who's constantly traveling with it, then they immediately get direction as to how to elevate their circumstance. So this is the principle of Paramatma. The only thing is that this Paramatma is in a bit of a neutral disposition. It's just like if, I don't know how many of you grew up in a small town. I grew up in like a little town outside of Portland. So sometimes I don't know if those analogies and New York analogies are always relatable. Did anyone grow up in a small town, or is everyone born and raised in New York City? Okay, some people can relate. Now, how many of you remember when a carnival would come to your town? I don't know if this still happens. You can remember? So when a carnival comes to town, generally what they'll do is they'll appoint one police officer, right? Just to oversee the festival, just to make sure everything's in order. I remember every year we would have one particular festival in my town, and you'd have a few police officers oversee things just to keep things in order. So this Paramatma is like that police officer at the carnival. When the carnival comes and it sets up, the police officer's there, but when the carnival finishes, the police officer is off duty. So in the same way, that Paramatma is only present with us in this particular realm of relativity in order to give guidance, in order to work out the reactions of the activities we've engaged in previously. Every action has an equal opposite reaction. So the Paramatma within the heart is working out those reactions and simultaneously giving guidance to bring us to a higher standard of life. So it's only existing within that particular circumstance. So it's not the ultimate conclusion of truth. So what is that ultimate conclusion of truth? The Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains, Matat Paratanam Nanya Kinchinasti Dhananjaya Mai Sarvam Idam Protam Shruti Manigananiva. Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that me as a person, me personally, I am the highest truth. And all these other truths are resting upon me as pearls are strung upon a thread. Shruti Manigananiva. That all these other truths, all these relative truths and absolute truths, they're resting upon me. So what's significant about this conception of Krishna? Because most people you'll see in the world, they're not interested in a personal conception of truth. They're not interested in a personal conception of God. Isn't it? Most people they're a bit averted to that. They would prefer that things would just remain impersonal. They'd prefer that there be no relationship. But why is this relationship so valuable for us? Why is this such a significant thing? It's significant because you can see that in all circumstances of your life, the inherent need of everyone is they are seeking relationship. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how much position you have. It doesn't matter how many friends or how many followers or bank accounts you may have. At the end of the day, everyone is looking for relationship. Even the most hardened criminals in this world. When they see their children, they feel great joy because they seek that relationship. The only difficulty is that when we understand who we are categorically, when we look a little bit beyond just this changing material body in relationship to the relative circumstances of this world, if we are consciousness, that means that we are categorically different from this material body, which is unconscious, and the nature of that consciousness is eternal. So the nature of that consciousness is such that it's not seeking something which is of a different category than itself. If something is eternal, it won't be able to find substance in that which is temporary. So we may have relationships with family, we may have relationships with friends, we may have relationships between boys and girls, but all those relationships are ultimately temporary. But we can see that the relationships that we have in our life, they're the most valuable thing that we have. And most people nowadays, their whole conception of spirituality is to negate relationships altogether. But the process of bhakti yoga is, rather than trying to negate something artificially, rather than trying to remove something which is an inherent part of who you are, you should seek that which is in alignment with what you actually are. So what is this conception of Krishna? What is the sweetness of Krishna? Most people, when they think of God nowadays, or in any part of the world, if you think about God, if you think about a personal conception of absolute truth, they think of, this very powerful being sitting on a throne, giving judgment, and people worshiping with a mood of awe and reverence. Isn't it? This is most people's conception. You go to places like in Istanbul, they have a blue mosque. It's a very awe-inspiring feeling, very overwhelming experience of greatness. Or you go to St. Petersburg Cathedral, very overwhelming, opulent experience. And if you go to South India, there's a temple called the Balaji Temple, which is actually the richest temple on the entire planet. And the deity there, the form of Krishna, which is present there, is worshipped with gold and diamonds and so much jewelry, and it's a very, very overwhelming experience. But what is Krishna? What is this conception of Krishna? This conception of Krishna is God at home. It's the absolute truth on having a day off. I'll give an example, an analogy to make this relevant for you all. Just like the mayor of New York, he has a wife, he has children, and he has relationships with his wife and his children. And when he goes to the office, he has, the people he works with, he has his subordinates, and they all interact with him in a particular way. But when he goes home, his wife yells at him, his children laugh with him, and it's a completely different relationship than from when he's in the office. So one day the mayor is supposed to have a meeting, so one of his subordinates come, or one of his colleagues come, and he's asking the secretary, "Can I please come in? I need to meet with Mr. Mayor." And she says, "Actually, he's quite busy right now. You'll have to give him about an hour or so." And he says, "Okay." So an hour goes by, and he's wondering what's taking so long. So then he walks in, and he sees his son riding on his back, playing horsey ride. And the mayor is on his hands and knees, and he's saying, "Giddy up, giddy up." And the mayor, who's in charge of the whole city, is becoming subordinated by the love of his son. So this idea of Krishna is God becoming subordinated by the love of the living entity. That which is finite, capturing the infinite by the power of love. So this picture here that you see on the wall, this is Krishna in Vrindavan. And you can see his friends are all running after him, wondering who's going to catch Krishna first. So this conception of Krishna, it's a mood of sweetness, it's a mood of charm, and it's a mood of splendor. It's completely free from any idea of awe and reverence. And it's the ultimate conclusion of all spiritual knowledge, that you can have a relationship with the absolute truth. You can see the absolute truth and interact with the absolute truth in the same way that you would interact with a servant and a master, a son and a father, or a daughter and a father, a friend and a friend, or a lover and a beloved. All varieties of relationship. Like I said, everything within and beyond in our experience is completely present within the absolute truth. So just as we have relationships with friends, just as we have relationships with masters and servants, just as we have relationships with a boyfriend or girlfriend, just as we have relationships with our parents, in the same way, we can have a similar relationship with the absolute truth. And that relationship is revived, is developed. It's inherently within us. It's a natural part of who we are. That's why this pursuit for relationship is so prominent with us. It's just being directed towards temporary circumstances due to a lack of knowledge of our spiritual nature. But that nature can be revived through the chanting of the names of Krishna. So that bliss that you feel, if you had any experience when you were chanting, if you had any type of joy which kind of rose from your heart, what did you say? Where's my friend from earlier? Valdis. There. What was the experience that you said? Happiness in the heart, right?
Happiness in the heart.
Happiness in the heart. That happiness in the heart, is Krishna saying, keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. You're getting closer, you're getting closer. It's Krishna reciprocating. Just as if you have a relationship of love with a parent, with a boyfriend, with a girlfriend, it's not that the love is just static, but that love is expressed through service. So this chanting of Hare Krishna, it's an expression of our desire to want to love and serve Krishna. And it's the beginning of reviving that relationship with Krishna, because it's engaging our most important sense, the tongue, in the service of vibrating Krishna's name. And that vibrating of Krishna's name is so powerful because Krishna is absolute. The absolute truth is everything within and beyond our experience. Because it's absolute, the name of Krishna is non-different from Krishna. You're directly associating with Krishna when you're chanting Krishna's names. You're directly in contact with Krishna when you're chanting Krishna's names. So that joy that you're feeling is the joy of being with Krishna. The happiness that you're feeling is the happiness that you're experiencing by being directly with Krishna. You can go on chanting so many names of this world. You can try chanting your parents' names. You can try chanting your friends' names. You can try chanting your favorite fruit's name. If you like mangoes, you can go on saying mango, 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 mango. But you'll never get the taste of a mango. You'll never get the substance. Actually, you'll be perceived as being completely insane if you do that. But if you chant the names of Krishna, you're in direct contact with Krishna. And that's why the joy which arises within our heart is so palpable, is so real. It's completely beyond any sensual, mental, or intellectual experience of this world. So we ask everyone, I think this is called Bhakti School. That's what it's called. So Bhakti School is coming into an atmosphere in which one can learn about this reviving of one's relationship with Krishna in a mood of service, in a mood of devotion. It's not that love is static, but love is active. And there's so many things which you can do for Krishna. you can cook for Krishna, you can clean for Krishna, you can share books about Krishna, you can chant Krishna's names, you can sew for Krishna, you can do so many things. Everything within and beyond your experience can be done for Krishna. So whatever particular talents that you have, whatever particular abilities that you have, it's not that you need to give those up artificially. Some spiritual paths, they say you need to give all of this up and negate this reality because everything here is ultimately false. But the process of bhakti is such that whatever nature that you have, you simply utilize those talents and those abilities in expressing your love for Krishna in a practical and joyful way. So this is why the process of bhakti, the process of Krishna consciousness, is known as Kevala Ananda Kanda. It's a path full of bliss, it's a path full of joyfulness, and it's a path full of sweetness and charm. So we invite all of you to please continue to come and continue to associate to learn more about this beautiful process of Krishna consciousness and bhakti. So if there's any questions, we can open it up. And even better than a reflection is if you have, even better than a question is if you have a reflection. A reflection is anything that you heard that if it stuck in your mind, if it kind of captured your heart in a particular way, or you just appreciated the concept, you can just walk away with it. And you walk out on the street, you get on the subway and say, hey, what was that guy talking about in there anyways? And you can say. And then a question is a bit challenging. And anyone who asks a question, I offer my respects to 100,000 times. Because it's a bit bold to ask a question because it means we're going to expand the vibration and we have to go deeper into this. So any reflection or question on what was spoken? Yes?
Just a little reflection when you're talking about chant. I just recently finished Miracle on 2nd Avenue, which is one of the best books. And just before that, Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. But it was mentioned how when they were interviewed, it caught attention when Prabhu said, well, if you chant Queen Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth, you're not going to get anywhere, or that's disgusting. But because they were emphasizing Hare Krishna, like when you were talking about, like you can chant anything else, but nothing's to the effect of as you said. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a wonderful reflection. Practical to what you're taking in right now. Anyone else? Question or reflection? Someone who's come for the first time or someone who's relatively new have anything to say? Yes.
It's not a reflection, but an experience that I just witnessed maybe very recently on the train. So it has to do with the Brahman experience of a relationship with God, or with the fact that there's something there. The other day I was just running into the train, I was sitting in the train and somebody was running towards the train, the doors shut on him, and I overheard him saying, oh, I guess the universe wanted me to miss the train today. So I guess that was kind of an example of like them acknowledging that there is a higher power, but like saying that it's the universe that didn't get it for them.
That's a good point. Actually, it's explained in this book, the Srimad Bhagavatam, that the first phase of people coming to a theistic conception of life is being able to appreciate the power of nature. That if you've ever been to like Yosemite National Park or some beautiful natural setting, and you just feel this is so wonderful, this is so great, that appreciation is the first step to developing a theistic conception of life. Because that greatness which is expressed there is one of the many potencies of the absolute truth. So if one can experience that potency and appreciate that potency, it's noted. It's noted within the bank account of our conscious experience, and that will grow as time goes on. And that the point that you're bringing out is an interesting one, that within, as it's said often, that there's no atheist in a foxhole. Anyone understand this saying? It's kind of an archaic saying, but I can explain it. A foxhole is, it's good that no one can relate with it actually in one sense. A foxhole is a hole in which, in World War I, troops would go and dig a hole, and they would sit in that hole and then basically engage in gunfire with the opposing armies. So that's a foxhole. It was like a man-made hole which was used which is used in war. And in that circumstance, it's very life or death. You'll see people die, and it's likely that you can die. So in such a circumstance, this saying arose in World War I, that there's no atheist in a foxhole. So in the course of our life, you'll see that even the people who are completely opposed in spirituality, even those who are completely, against any concepts of, higher power or an underlying greatness which is pervading everything, even those people will make subconscious remarks alluding to something which is beyond them. Because it's inherent within us to be subordinate to that greatness. It's inherent within us to appreciate that greatness. It's our natural inclination to appreciate the greatness of our existence and our connection with everything and everyone. Anyone else? Please don't be shy. I know it can be a little bit daunting to speak in a group of strangers, but I encourage everyone. The more it's brought out, the more rich the experience becomes. Because as I was saying, the essence of who we are is relationship, and that relationship is based on reciprocation. So, I've put myself out. So the more that we reciprocate, the deeper the experience becomes. Yes, please.
So when I need some guidance or support from Krishna or higher consciousness, I meditate, and when I meditate, it's not a straightforward answer. Sometimes I get a few options. So how do I know if this is coming directly from Krishna or higher consciousness, or this is, my mind or ego making it up? It's very hard for me to differentiate.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely can be difficult to discriminate. So what I have always found is that it's important to keep good counsel. It means that we should try to associate with those who are very grounded in the conclusions of spiritual knowledge. There's something which is known as Siddhanta, which it means the conclusion of spiritual truths. And they're axioms by which one can direct and guide their life. And there's some people in this world who are very fixed in Siddhanta, and they only make decisions on the basis of those considerations and conclusions. Most people in the world, well, not most people, mostly myself, likes to function on the basis of what our mind is telling us to do. And we don't necessarily function on the basis of what is higher knowledge asking us to do. So initially, if we're not trained in that higher knowledge, we may not be able to distinguish what is guidance and what is the own concoctions of our previous sensual experiences. Because basically the mind, it functions as like a movie screen. And it's just taking in images from our previous sensual experiences and then combining those images and producing ideas and conceptions, attractions and repulsions on the basis of those experiences. So we would do well to surround ourselves with those who are very grounded in spiritual knowledge, and that those people who are grounded in spiritual knowledge are known as sadhus. And those sadhus are fixed in that which is sat, that which is eternal. So the advice that they give you, the guidance which they give you, you can take it for granted that it's going to be coming from that higher realm. And when we function on the basis of that guidance, and then simultaneously as we become mature and being able to apply that guidance ourselves, we'll come to a point where the promptings of our heart become more fixed with that spiritual direction. But simultaneously, I've seen that even those who are quite mature in their spiritual practices, for the sake of relationship, because we were mentioning that the highest conception of truth is not just, the parent in the room giving guidance on a neutral level, but the highest consideration is the absolute truth becoming subordinated by love, becoming indebted to the love of the living entity. So I've noticed that those who are quite spiritually advanced, for the sake of upholding that principle and moving in that direction of intimacy, of affection, of sweetness, they continue to take guidance for the sake of nurturing the relationships. Because what the basis of association is revealing one's mind in confidence, means expressing their experiences, expressing the directions, expressing their need for help, and then revealing one's mind in confidence and giving confidential guidance as well. So this exchange, it cultivates relationship. So the more we can move in that direction of relationship, rather than just considering ourselves an independent entity, the more that we feel ourselves dependent on those who are spiritually advanced, the more that we feel ourselves dependent on that higher realm, the more we move in a natural direction in our life. Because it helps nurture that intimacy, it helps nurture that affection, it helps nurture that sweetness. Yes. Okay, we're starting to reciprocate. That's good. I'm happy.
I appreciated what you said about going through spiritual apathy, and if you didn't have the best experience with it in the past. I think one of the things I definitely related to it, and then also the process of almost knowing that you can get out of it to a point where you then start to become almost materially apathetic. It's like it's so night and day when you do take the time and really focus yourself to it. It's definitely, it's like as things go on, things that maybe, not to say that you can't enjoy things anymore, but it's almost like a lot of things no longer make you frustrated, and you start to enjoy the service that you do. Like chanting is very hard in the beginning. One round feels like an hour.
Yeah.
And then, with the process of reading and doing things, everything else almost starts to become, instead of thinking, all spirituality is, horrible and I don't like it, and then you start to, it's almost like then you start to understand, like now this is, it starts to become the most important thing in your life, as opposed to being so off put by it.
I really like this point that you're making, that as we make progress through practice, then the natural byproduct is we feel a sense of detachment from the circumstances which agitate our mind, because in any and all circumstances in life, there's going to be pleasurable and unpleasurable situations, people, places, which create opposing dualities. But the whole point of a spiritual practice is that you can go beyond those dualities. But in order to go beyond those dualities, we have to have a taste for that higher activity. Because unless we have a higher taste, then we're going to continue on with the activities which we've been doing. So the point which you're making is a very good one, that by consistency in a spiritual practice, a higher taste naturally develops, and from that higher taste, detachment from the relativities of our day-to-day life is the natural byproduct. And you don't have to artificially go for that. Many times people try to negate their material experience, but they have nothing to take shelter of. But if you have a spiritual practice, then that negation becomes quite natural. You don't even think about it. It's just like, someone who has had like fresh ice cream, like homemade fresh ice cream, and then someone comes and offers you like a Nestle, street ice cream. As soon as you've had that homemade fresh ice cream, there's no question of wanting that street ice cream anymore, because you've gotten the higher taste from the homemade ice cream. So we have to get that higher taste for spiritual activity, for spiritual service. Thank you very much. A very nice point. It's 8:10. I don't know when I'm supposed to stop. Tulsi, help me.
Yeah, let's see if someone else gets something else to say.
Okay, sure. Yes.
Do you think anger can be a part of a happy life?
Yeah, anger is anger is an emotion which is such. It's recommended that it's controlled. It's explained Mancho Vegam, Manasakrota Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udarapasta Vegam, Etam Yo Vegam, Visaheta Dira, Sarvam Api Mam Pratidam Shashashya. That one has to learn to control their sense of speech, one has to learn to control their mind, one has to learn to control their tongue, one has to learn to control their belly, one has to learn to control their genitals, and one has to learn how to control anger. Because these senses, like if you've ever experienced, I know I've seen it in my life, you say one thing, it can change the whole direction of a relationship. Has anyone experienced this before? Just saying one thing, it can either make or break a relationship. And it's the same thing with all these other senses which I've mentioned, that you get too much on the platform of the mind and start following the script of the mind. It can really lead you in a dangerous direction if you're not taking higher guidance while making those decisions. So in the same way, anger is such that if it's not controlled, it can lead us into a lot of dangerous circumstances. Now in the realm of transcendence, like I was saying, everything which exists here has to exist there, because this is just a reflection of that realm of sweetness, of that realm of charm, of that realm of loveliness. So that anger is there, but it's existing for the purpose of relationship, and it's serving the purpose of relationship. But when it's reflected into this world, it has the ability to break relationship, and it has the ability to degrade. So it's explained that that particular emotion, it needs to learn to be controlled, it needs to be learned to be not suppressed, but it needs to learn, we have to learn to control it, and we have to learn to know when and when not to use it. And you can learn how to use it by being in the association of those who have controlled their senses, who have controlled that emotion. And they can give guidance as to how it can be used and when it can be used. Is that okay? Oh, if you have more to say, please. You have more? Reciprocation.
I don't know, like I guess recently, I don't really usually feel like an angry person, but I kind of feel like people are expecting me to be an angry person.
Well, I can give some insight from the Bhagavad Gita which may help give some higher perspective on how that emotion could be rising. Anger is said to be a byproduct of unfulfilled material desires. And we live in a society which is founded on the basis of unfulfilled material desires.
Well, it's like all around us all the time.
Exactly. And generally we're more associated with that. Actually, we're practically drowning in that. So because of being in such close proximity and association with that, it's very easy to become deluded by that particular emotion. But if you want to change the content of your life, then change the channel. If you don't like what you're being subjected to, then change the subject. Which means that you can make the conscious choice. It's explained that every living entity, their inherent right is to rise in due course of time. So you have a choice. Do I want to make spiritual progress?
Do we always have a choice in what we're tuned into?
We have a choice as to whether we want to move in the direction of making spiritual progress or not. We don't have a choice in terms of the material circumstances which we become subjected to when we've made the choice not to make spiritual progress. Because the way that reality is running, it's running like a machine. So you get plugged into that machine, and then according to the script of the machine, you have to go with that program. But if you choose to unplug from it to make spiritual progress, and that's always an option, especially when you've come into association, especially when you've been given the opportunity to chant, especially when you've been given the opportunity to hear the message of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. When that is giving you the opportunity that you can unplug from this if you like. You can detach yourself from this. It's just a matter of whether you choose to. Because the basis of love is not force. The basis of love is choice.
We're constantly taking ourselves around into places.
Yeah.
Life is sometimes fast, life is sometimes slow. You might be walking, you might be running. It's like the modes in which we take ourselves change our perspective as much as our scrolling.
Correct. It's exactly like that. It's exactly like that. It's explained in the Bhagavad Gita that what you touch becomes a part of you. What you interact with in this world, the things you associate with, the people that you associate with, the habits which you develop, that colors your consciousness in a particular way. And it's not always easy to get free from that coloring. But...
Well, you can kind of... I've held a sword, so I can say, one can live by the sword and die by the sword. That's a sort of... I don't know why I specifically said that. We're all in bodies, so that's a much more relatable perspective. We all have hands, we all have feet. That's why I like saying, we all walk and we all run.
Now, the point is that the choices that you make, they have repercussions. But when you make a choice towards making progress on a spiritual path, even just the choice to come here and chant, it's explained in the Bhagavad Gita that whatever progress that you make on this path, in this pursuit towards truth, whether it's conscious or unconscious, that is an investment in your spiritual bank account. It's noted, confirmed. So it's an investment in your spiritual bank account. And when that investment is there, that even if you come here and you never come here again, the impression is there, and it's not there just for this life. It's just like if you have a bank account, you raise $100 million in this life. When you leave the body, that bank account is gone. But any progress which you've made on a spiritual path, any attention, even if it's only been for a microsecond, that's noted. It's recognized. And you will be given an opportunity to pursue that again in the future. According to the degree that we choose to pursue that, to that degree, opportunity will be given to us. It's explained in the Bhagavad Gita that those who walk this spiritual path, generally it's not the first time that they've done it. And that even if one is unsuccessful in the path of yoga, things will be arranged in such a way that in your life you will become naturally inclined towards the principles of yoga later on. Not yoga in terms of stretching, but yoga in terms of pursuing the nature of who you are in reality. You'll be given that opportunity again. And you'll be attracted to it as if by force, actually, based on your contact with it previously. So anything that you do in the realm of connecting with who you actually are beyond this relative material body. You're not this body, you're not the family that you came from, you're not the city that you grew up in. All of these things are just temporary coverings, just like an actor on a stage. But any investment that you've made towards moving to who you actually are, beyond that drama which we've convinced ourselves of, it's noted, and you will be given an opportunity to move towards it in the future with full vigor. It's just a matter of how much effort we're willing to apply to realizing that nature. It's completely up to us, because love has to function on the basis of free will. It has to function on the basis of choice. It won't be forced, but opportunity will always be given. Just like a father who has an estranged son. He won't force the son to come back, but he'll always be trying to provide opportunities for the son to come back. But the son ultimately has to make the choice. So in the same way, we have to make the choice to want to revive that relationship of love, revive that relationship of service, revive that relationship of sweetness. But it's completely up to us. And Krishna is willing to facilitate us in any particular way that we want in order to revive that relationship. If we want to ignore him, Krishna will provide all reasons as to why he should be ignored. If we want to remember him, he'll provide all experiences and all resources in order for that relationship to be revived. Is that okay? Stop? Okay. We can speak after, don't worry. Yeah. Hare Krishna.